What's going on, guys? So today we're going to talk about changing out the seals and bushings on your 39. This goes for 41 millimeter forks. I've already got the other side off and this one half off before I decided to start taking a video. But the first thing you're going to do is take your brake caliper off, your wheel, fender, and then you'll be to this point. So then the next thing you'll do is go ahead and crack these two bolts loose here. Normally they're both the T30, but this one's got a hex because the turn signals. Crack those loose. Careful, because it might just go ahead and drop right out. And you can lower it down. I like to stop right here, and then I'll take my socket and break that loose once I tighten this back down, clamp it. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and loosen that bolt back up and slide your fork off. So there's probably a couple different ways you could do these next couple steps, but this is how I do them. I come in here, take this Phillips head screw out, crack that loose. Make sure you push on it pretty good when you go to crack it loose, because sometimes they stick in there pretty good and you don't want to strip it out. But once you pull that out, I like to tip it up, kind of squeeze it, compress it a couple times, squirt the fluid out until I get air pushing out, and then you'll come down here, and there's it's awfully dirty up in there, but there's a hex head bolt inside of there, and not a bad idea to have an impact on hand for that one. Just go ahead and pull that one out, and then you can tip it up, and there'll probably be some residual fluid in there. Alright, so now we're over to the vise. This next step, you can use whatever you want to use for it that you think is going to work best, but I like a small little ball peen and a tiny little punch. And you're going to come over to right here. There's going to be a little indent, and you can start tapping that, and it'll just barely start moving up, and then you can come around and tap and walk around it, and it'll pop up off. That's how bad these seals are leaking as soon as the cap pulled off. How much is just sitting on top of there. Alright, so now that's somewhat cleaned off, you can actually see what's under here. We're going to take the dust cap off and just take a screwdriver. We're replacing it, so it doesn't matter if you tear this up. And just take that same little hammer and just tap around the edge, and it'll slide up off there. Alright. Get that focus. So here's what you're going to see once you get that dust cap off, and that's going to be your snap ring. And sometimes you need a pick, sometimes you can get away with just popping a screwdriver in there, and there it goes. For this next part, you really want to crank down your vise and get these clamped nice and tight. Highly recommend some of these. These are just 3D printed vise blocks. Really save your lowers from getting all marred up. But the reason you want to clamp this down so hard is because now that you're loose and all your fluid's out, you can slide this up and down, and you're actually going to basically pile drive it up, and that's going to slide the actual seal and the ring up out of there. And you just keep boom, boom, boom until it pops up out of there. Here's what you got. So now we're going to go ahead and take the cap off. Be careful once it starts getting to the end of the threads. It's under some pressure, and it will fly up out of there. Alright, now that you have your cap off, you can go ahead and pull your spring out. Alright, so now that we're back over at the bench, that dirty rag out of there. You can go ahead and pull this out, set it off to the side. And then you have this little spring. And just remember, this is how this is going to go back. And that's your bottom. So we're going to go ahead and start replacing the stuff that goes on here. I'm kind of doing this one-handed, so this looks kind of funky. excuse me. So 1, 2, this one. Let's see if I can do this one-handed. And we just have a bare tube. So the first thing I'm going to start with is your lower bushing. It's the wide one, and I just like to go from the bottom, and I'll just slide over and click in there. So then the next one is going to be the similar looking one to that, but it's going to be a little thicker, a little narrower. And you'll slide that one on from the top. Bam. And for here, your ring. I'll slide that in from the top. And there you go. This is the bottom of your fork. Like that. And that's the order they'll go in. And then here, for this top one, there'll be a little plastic one right there. And we're going to go ahead and replace that with the white one. Yep. So just got to pop that off there, pop a new one on. And there it is. When you're doing this and you set your lower off to the side and you pick it up, jostling around, you might have something fall out. It's going to look like this. If you're unsure and you do have this come out on you, it'll slide in like this. So flat side goes down to the bottom to flat side, and this side will face up like this. If you look, I don't know if you'll be able to see it on camera. Yeah, there's kind of a little bit of a oh, there it is. See a little cup down there, so that'll fit right down inside of there. Alright, so we got the new lower ready to go. It's on the vise. I'm going to go ahead and plop this in. That's how it'll go. And it'll come popping out the end there. And you just come over and slide this down in there. Alright. So the next thing I like to do is, before I even get the seal and put it in, I like to take my seal pusher and stick it over here and tap this ring down, because you can see that little lip literally sitting right above the washer is where that C-clip's going to go, and there's no room for the seal there. So we'll go ahead and tap that in the top bushing all the way down to where it's going to seat, and then we'll have room to, because if not, then you're trying to push the bushing, the spacer, and the freaking seal down in there, and they're such a tight fit that pushing all three at the same time is kind of a pain in the ass. So I like to just tap that all the way down in there and make sure that all I have to do is worry about pushing the seal down, and then you don't tear the seal up or do any of that stuff. So we'll go ahead and get that tapped down in there, and then we'll grab the seal. Alright, I think we got that pushed in far enough. And take your seal. I like to rub a little bit of fluid on it, but there's a spot that's got a pretty deep bevel, and then a more flat spot. That flat spot's going to be your top, and that bevel spot's going to go down. So just go ahead up to the top, slide it on down, and then get your your seal pusher and tap it around. Now that our seal's in, we can put a retaining clip in, and I like to just shove the two ends together down into the slot, and then take my seal pusher and just give her a couple taps, and that usually seats them. If I get the camera to focus in there, usually seats them pretty well. So now that that's done, we can go ahead and grab the dust cap and slide it over and tap it down. Alright, go ahead and take the dust cover, and you may have to tap it down in. What I like to do is take the handle end of a screwdriver and just tap that in with a small hammer all the way around. This does a pretty good job of not messing this up. Put our beauty ring on, and then we can put the bottom bolt in and go ahead and fill it up with fluid and spring. And the last little O-ring you're going to have in your kit is going to be for your cap. Let's go ahead and change that. We'll put our new bolt in the bottom, spring, and fluid. Now if you're just pulling these out, it's not considered a dry fill, so I can't remember the exact ounces. I want to say it's like around 8 to 10. I normally go with the shock, no spring in it, shock completely down, tube completely down, fill it up with fluid, and go about 5 inches from the top. But it's going to depend on how you want it set up, how stiff, how much rebound. So do your own research on your weight and riding style and see how much fluid you feel like you should put in and what weight. But for this rider, we're going to use 15 weight, and we're going to put it about 5 inches from the top. This is going to be a dry fill, so it's going to take a little bit more versus if you're just changing the seals. But these are brand new, so they're dry. Alright, so after you got the fluid and the spring back in, that spring's going to be sticking up out of the top just the same way it was when you took it off. What I like to do is I'll just sit the fork upright on the ground with the lower down, take that cap in my hand, and then just compress it down with my weight, and then I spin the fork tube underneath of me and tighten it down until I get a good bite on it, and then I stick it back on the bike and tighten it down just like I showed you how I take it off. I clamp it down low right here and spin it off. Put it there, clamp it on, and then you can run it up through and mount your fork. And then you're done.